back to another episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through a story about Social Security and its possible impending end. Oh, I know we've heard so many scares about Social Security during the first few months of the Trump administration, but there's actually some meat to some of the story, and there's also a little bit of overblowing on Axios' part, but we'll get to that in a second. And of course, we'll end today with our Daily Delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. But that's enough rambling for me. Let's jump into our daily debate. So, if you had to choose to have a privatized system where you can invest in whatever stocks you want, or a pension system that your company provides, or Social Security, what do you want? Which of those are you going to take? It's always interesting. Throw it down in the comment section. I want to hear people's opinions because you hear many opinions from ideologues, but the average person has very different feelings about it. So, with that said, let's actually jump into the meat. Like I was talking about, this article comes from Axios. Headline reads, Social Security rushing service cuts at White House request, source says. Now, when it says service cuts, it doesn't mean that it's going to actually stop the amount of money flowing to individuals, but it is referring to the actual lowering of the staff who is able to provide certain services, whether that be over the phone, online, and they're trying to, you've probably heard this story before, there's the idea that they're going to basically make Social Security a local system. Every single local administrative agency is going to be able to handle the inflow, and people are going to have to go to different locations in person in order to actually get their Social Security payments. And I don't know if you feel good or bad about that. I think that most people don't necessarily feel good or bad about this situation because they don't know how it's actually going to pan out. They don't understand what it means. And I'm not saying, oh, well, people don't understand what it means. It's not necessarily, but that's not what I'm trying to imply. I'm not trying to say people are dumb. What I'm trying to say is that you have no idea what this system looks like. You have no idea because we've never seen something like this before. And, or at least we haven't seen it in the modern age where everything is easily accessible to us through our phones. So people who are ideologues about it are saying, okay, great, we're cutting back the waste in Social Security. And the Democrats who don't necessarily, or the other ideologues on the other side of the aisle who are saying, actually, no, we want to keep Social Security. And there are some Republicans out there too, the populist Republicans that want to keep Social Security. They're just outright, they're cheering, saying, oh, look, okay, some of them are cheering, saying, hey, we're cutting waste and we're actually going to improve the system. And other ones are decrying it because they're afraid that Social Security is going to go away. Everybody brings their own perspective to the table before actually analyzing what it's going to look like. And of course, these are just rumors coming from Axios. So to pretend as though we have any true insight as to what the system will look like specifically is, I don't want to say naive because, of course, the reports say one thing and they provide some insight, but this is going to receive backlash, especially if it is a system that is not accessible through phones, internet. And what I mean by that is, probably a lot of seniors nowadays are not necessarily adept at smartphones. I would say maybe 10%, 15% of the population is adept at a smartphone, and that means that they could pay bills online. And even then, maybe that would be through a website rather than actually on a smartphone. The rest are, possibly learning, but they'll probably call into Social Security or they may go visit their local location anyway. But that's enough of me bearing the lead. Let's actually get to the first two quotes or first two paragraphs from this article so we can get a little context. Quote, the Social Security Administration is rushing cuts to phone services at the White House request. The agency's cutting commissioner told Social Security advocates in a meeting on Monday, two sources who attended tell Axios. Why it matters. These changes will strain the already struggling Social Security system and could even deprive some people of benefits entirely, according to current and former employees, advocates for the retirees. And like I was saying, in the number I provided, 10 to 15, it's a rough number. It's not to actually say, oh, this is the amount of people that do it. We could actually go and ask a very simple prompt of Perplexity and see what the average amount of internet uptake for seniors is. The percentage is going to be low. There's no doubt about that. We're not trying to pretend that, seniors are really good at the internet. I'm not trying to also denigrate them and say they're not good at the internet. I have a grandparent who is extremely good at the internet. They uptook the iPhone very quickly. They use Google on their computer to pay stuff. They're asking me about streaming to their TV whenever I go over. And I had another grandparent who had a really hard time upticking and taking to the new technology. So there are, of course, many, many cases. So here's what the perplexity gave us as an answer. So for traditional methods of payments, seniors are more likely to use checks and mail to pay payments compared to younger generations. For example, 31% of seniors pay bills by check and 40% use mail. And the two sources that it provided are our friends over at ACI Worldwide that did an analysis of Americans doing payments, and they have another PDF here from ACI. So, yeah, if you want to go read that, you can. Now, here's the digital adoption rate. Despite traditional preferences, there are a growing trend of seniors adopting digital payment methods. For instance, 66% of seniors 61 and older, which I would say aren't actually seniors. Then again, they could apply for Social Security when they hit 65, so you could call them seniors. I was thinking of the people that are 80 years old, but fair enough. Uh, about 66% of seniors age 61 plus have used online channels for payment, and nearly 50% have used mobile devices. However, this does not specifically indicate phone calls as a preferred method, and I did specify the phone calls because that is how they'll be affected. So 66% is actually a large uptick. And let's remember, 61 plus is a larger age range than people that are used to paying, getting their services, or at least calling into Social Security to figure things out a very particular way. But I think it actually points out that my misconception led me to believe that this would be a worse deal. And I obviously don't agree with Axios on their opinion or their statement that this will be devastating to seniors. I didn't think that at the very beginning because you can go to your local office anyway. But it at least disillusioned me, the search disillusioned me of the amount of seniors that actually are able to do things through digital payment services. And if that is still operational, which it appears to be to some degree, I'm not saying it's going to be exactly the same. They're probably going to cut back on staff managing it. But in theory, it will still be operational, though there will be cuts, like I said. That means that there's still a large percentage of people who are above the age of 61 who are able to actually get the information they need from online portals. So, will these changes be as bad? Is it actually a true statement to say that this is going to be devastating, that this is going to be a scare? I would say no. I think it's not going to be as bad as Axios is pointing it out to be. And also, as I've said before, I am not a fan of Social Security and Medicare. And obviously, I'm a young person who hasn't paid in for their entire life. So that's the bias I come from. It will be a system that won't actually benefit me. We could be defaulted by then, especially with the amount of interest that we're paying on Social Security, but also the amount of time that we have spent trying to reform it and will continue to try to reform it, which will never reap any benefits because politicians don't want to actually sink it because they can't, because a lot of older people vote compared to us younger people. So let's actually go into this section here from Axios that I enjoy. They call it reality check. Quote, while the changes will make it harder for many to apply for benefits, those who are already receiving checks aren't expected to face any disruptions. That is what's really important there, which is this is why it's not actually a scare. When you hit a certain age, you can apply for benefits. And as these generations are getting older, my parents, they are approaching the age where they could very well go in and say, okay, we're going to start getting our retirement plan. Not there yet, but they're getting closer. My point is that they are both relatively tech savvy. One of them more than the other, but they are both relatively tech savvy. As this next generation of people who had to adapt to this changing technology to operate in the business world, to operate in the world in general, the uptick in Facebook in that generation is extremely high. These numbers will continue to increase when talking about the amount of seniors 61 plus that are able to use these technologies in order to get their job done when they're going and trying to figure out how to enroll in Social Security. And guess what? The checks aren't going to stop. They're not going to stop anytime soon because Donald Trump does not want to touch it. He does not want that to be his legacy. So this is a scare. This is a straight Social Security scare. I understand that some people will be adversely affected. You will see stories about it. You will see empathetic stories trying to appeal to your emotion. They are trying to use the pathos, man. Sorry, I said it like a plebeian. They're trying to use the pathos in order to evoke some sort of feeling in you in order to compel you to agree with their point. There, sounded like a professor that I used to have. But what I'm getting at is you will see these stories coming out about people losing benefits or possibly having to change information and going through a long struggle in order to do it and might not be able to. And there will be reporting about this because it is a very specific problem that the media loves to hamper on because they want to make people scared that Social Security is going away, that they may not get their benefits. But the reality check in here tells us the truth. And the fact that they bury it a few paragraphs down is hilarious to me because of course they're pushing a narrative. They want to get the headline, and it obviously worked because I read it and now I'm here reporting it. I'm reporting it. Relaying it to you is the correct word because Axios did the reporting. I'm just reading their work. Thank you again, Axios. Fair use, obviously, so please do not come after me and try to sue me. But the point being that they're trying to use sensationalist tactics in order to tar Donald Trump. And whether or not you agree with Donald Trump, there are many things I don't agree on Donald Trump about. I don't agree with his approach to Social Security specifically. If you go back in multiple episodes, you will hear me talk about this. That doesn't mean that scaring people into disliking him, scaring people into putting out headlines that aren't necessarily false, but they evoke a certain emotional reaction and are meant to cause a little bit of outrage. I understand that's how you get clicks, but at the end of the day, the people that only read headlines are going to get a wrong impression here versus burying the fact check, basically the reality check, 3 paragraphs down. So we're going to leave it there. We're going to go from the negative and we're going to jump into the positive. We're going to talk about our daily delight. This one comes from Dog Time, and the headline reads, "Dog can't stop swimming in the air in an adorable video." It's actually a Florida man and Florida dog. There's a video attached to this article where you can see the guy. He's like, I'm going to get the water. I'm going to get the water. I'm going to get the water. And this little dog is absolutely going for it, and he's just paddling throughout the air, which is hilarious. But also to some degree, that is how dogs are trained. I mean, that's how we taught our dog to swim, so maybe it's a little relatable. Maybe you want to go check out the video, and maybe it'll bring back some childhood memories of teaching your dog to swim. So with all of that, if you want to check out that article or you want to check out the one from Axios, both of them will be linked in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, and Podvine, all the links. And if you want to come back on Tuesday and Thursday, that's when we do 6 and 6. That is our international news segment where we cover anything from North America all the way to Australia. We're supposed to have one story from each continent. So with all of that, I think there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.